It looked like a regular jewelry shop in Hatton Garden, London's glittering heart of gold and diamonds. Behind the reinforced glass, 24-karat gold bars were neatly stacked, and designer watches gleamed under spotlights, promising wealth, status, and legitimacy. But the real business took place away from the pristine counters, in a back room where the air was thick with the scent of street cash still warm and carrying the faint, grimy residue of the trade that generated it. Here, the customers weren't city traders celebrating a bonus or tourists seeking a timeless souvenir. They were traffickers, couriers, and middlemen with dirt under their nails, haunted eyes, and encrypted phones clutched in their pockets. Every transaction was meticulously recorded on paper, a clean receipt for a clean purchase. But behind this fragile facade of legitimacy was a raging torrent of drug money, a river of dirty cash being laundered, rinsed, and reinvested into an ever-expanding criminal enterprise that spanned from the coca fields of South America to the quiet suburbs of England. At the center of it all were two names no one in the jewelry district had ever heard: Matthew Byrne and Beau Devlin. Byrne, the calm, calculated architect, was a phantom hiding in the tranquil, leafy suburbs of Sevenoaks. Devlin, younger, sharper, and more audacious, was a product of the relentless grind of East London's streets. Together, they forged a cocaine empire worth an estimated £190 million, smuggling tons of Class A drugs into the UK and washing the astronomical profits through gold bars, high-end watches, powerful firearms, and a web of ghost companies. They believed their encrypted chats on the impenetrable EncroChat platform made them invisible ghosts in the machine. They thought they were untouchable. They were profoundly wrong. This is the story of how their silent, sophisticated empire came crashing down with a deafening roar. What time is it where you are, and where are you watching us from? I look forward to your responses in the comments, and, of course, please subscribe to the channel. Matthew Byrne was the antithesis of the stereotypical drug kingpin. He didn't radiate danger or flaunt his immense wealth. There were no flashy supercars, no champagne-soaked nights in exclusive London clubs, no entourage of menacing heavies. Instead, he cultivated an almost painfully ordinary existence in Sevenoaks, a peaceful, affluent Kent town where the ambient noise was the gentle thwack of a golf ball, not the roar of a criminal underworld. In his 40s, Byrne was a quiet neighbor, a man who drove a brand new but respectable Jaguar and was in the process of building a new house right next door to his parents. To the outside world, he was the embodiment of comfortable, middle-class successor man with a steady, legitimate plan. But this carefully constructed veneer of suburban normality was a mask. Online, within the shielded confines of the EncroChat network, Byrne shed his skin. Operating under the handles Slick Valley and Official Cleaner, he transformed into the cold, clinical, and dangerously efficient mastermind of a transnational narcotics syndicate. From the quiet of his Kent home, he was the system builder, the master puppeteer pulling strings that reached across continents. He coordinated multi-ton shipments of cocaine from South American cartels, managed a complex network of international contacts, and directed the intricate laundering of millions in illicit profits. Byrne wasn't the one on the docks lifting crates or on the streets making deals. He was the one who designed the entire horrifyingly effective machine. His indispensable partner in this enterprise was Beau Devlin. At just 33, when he was finally apprehended, Devlin was the raw energy to Byrne's calculated calm. Hailing from the noisy, relentless streets of East London, he was the hands-on enforcer. His EncroChat alias was Scalp Cleaner, and unlike his boss, Devlin was immersed in the physical reality of their trade. He was the one who ferried the heavy bags of cash, sometimes 100,000 pounds at a time, to their Hatton Garden contact. He was the one who personally oversaw the movement of assets. And when one of Byrne's dummy shipments of banana shoes to test the security of their smuggling routes couldn't be offloaded through legitimate channels, it was Devlin who received the blunt order to drive the pallets to a secluded spot and torch them, ensuring no loose ends could ever trace back to their operation. The two men were a study in contrast: the suburban strategist who dealt in logistics and high finance, and the street-smart operator who handled the dirty work. Yet their partnership was symbiotic. Byrne provided the grand vision and the ice-cold logic. Devlin provided the muscle, the nerve, and the unwavering execution. Together, they shared a crucial, defining skill: silence. For nearly 8 years, they operated without spectacle. There were no bloody turf wars, no flashy convoys, no headline-grabbing violence. They had evolved far beyond mere drug dealers. They were direct importers, wholesalers, and suppliers, plugged straight into the South American producers. Their encrypted conversations were not about ounces or kilos, they were about tons. Two names that barely registered a whisper on the streets had, from behind a digital curtain, completely flooded them. The true genius of their smuggling operation lay in its almost insulting mundanity. They eschewed the cliches of crime thrillers. There were no hollowed-out statues, no impossibly complex false bottoms in shipping containers. There were just bananas. Tons and tons of them, arriving on pallets in legitimate shipments from the bustling ports of Colombia and Ecuador. To customs officials and port authorities scanning manifests, it was just another load of fresh produce destined for UK supermarkets. The paperwork was immaculate. The companies listed were registered, the routes were conventional, but buried deep within selected loads, packed into dense, vacuum-sealed blocks and carefully concealed beneath layers of perfectly yellow fruit, was high-purity cocaine. It was a logistical sleight of hand on an industrial scale. To support this, Byrne had built an elaborate corporate facade network of fake companies, complete with registered addresses, phone numbers, and VAT credentials. These paper businesses existed for one reason only: to move product, dodge customs inspections, and render the true architects of the conspiracy invisible. The method was refined through meticulous testing. Byrne was a cautious operator. He routinely organized dummy runs, entire consignments of perfectly good bananas shipped with no drugs inside at a cost of up to £300,000 per run. These were expensive rehearsals designed to test the viability and security of a new route, or to check if a particular port had heightened its security. If the clean load made it through without a hitch, the real one, packed with hundreds of kilos of cocaine, would follow like a shadow. Their EncroChat messages, later laid bare by law enforcement, revealed the breathtaking scale of their ambition. In a 3-month period between March and June 2020 alone, they were actively coordinating the importation of approximately 5 tons of cocaine through major European ports like Antwerp, before the final leg into the UK. One series of messages laid out the chillingly casual economics of their trade. A single payment of £3 million for a 600-kilo shipment. This wasn't low-grade, heavily cut street product. This was pure, uncut cocaine straight from the source, which, once processed and distributed, would fetch a price many times its import value. And it wasn't all by sea. Byrne's messages also spoke of plug cars, everyday vehicles that had been expertly modified with secret compartments, or hides, carved into their bodywork. The craftsman behind these mobile safes was a shadowy figure known only as the plug bosses, a specialist who could turn a standard family hatchback into a smuggling tool capable of moving 2.5 million pounds worth of cocaine in a single, undetected trip. Drivers, often paid as much as £5,000 per run, would ferry the drugs across the country, tracked only by the coded language on their encrypted phones. For nearly 8 years, their multi-pronged pipeline by sea and by land flowed without a single interruption. An operation of this magnitude doesn't just generate profits, it generates a physical problem. Mountains of cash, a chaotic mix of denominations, all of it dirty and impossible to spend on a large scale without raising red flags. This cash needed to be cleaned, and the solution was found in the most respectable of settings: London's jewelry quarter, Hatton Garden. Here, in this world of old money and trusted dealers, the river of grimy drug money was systematically transformed into gleaming, legitimate assets. The man who held the key to this financial alchemy was Chris O'Shea, a 56-year-old jeweler. On the EncroChat network, he was known by the handle All-Stargent. To Matthew Byrne and Beau Devlin, he was more than just a shopkeeper. He was the indispensable financial engine of their entire empire. O'Shea's shop became their high-end laundromat. The process was brutally simple. Devlin would arrive with bags heavy with bulk street cash, and O'Shea would exchange it for solid 24-karat gold bars and high-end designer watches from brands like Rolex and Patek Philippe. He effectively scrubbed the criminal proceeds clean, turning them into pristine, globally accepted stores of value. Byrne didn't deal in trivial amounts. His EncroChat messages showed him arranging the purchase of 10 to 15 gold bars in a single transaction, with each bar costing in the region of £40,000. Photographs later recovered from Byrne's phone served as a digital trophy cabinet of his success, gleaming stacks of bullion, a physical manifestation of his laundered wealth. For his services, O'Shea charged a modest 3% commission, a small price, to pay for the priceless gift of clean currency, untraceable and ready to be stashed, resold, or reinvested into the next multi-ton shipment. For years, his shop operated under a cloak of legitimacy, its windows glittering with luxury while its back room sanitized the sins of the street. It was a perfect silent partnership. The portfolio of Matthew Byrne's criminal enterprise extended beyond drugs and gold into a colder, more dangerous commodity: firearms. He didn't advertise his arsenal openly, but through the same encrypted channels, he offered select, trusted contacts access to a cache of weapons. His inventory included self-loading pistols and silencers, the tools of assassination and criminal warfare, not self-defense. One of his most reliable customers was a 51-year-old man from Bromley named Jody Hall, who operated on EncroChat under the formidable handle Unbeaten Mooses. The process for these transactions was as professional and cautious as Byrne's drug logistics. He employed a third-party intermediary, a figure referred to in the chats only as the Boxer, whose role was to physically inspect each weapon and verify its quality before any money or product changed hands. It was a system designed to insulate Byrne from the direct risk of the exchange. But in July 2020, this system failed. The network suffered its first major blow when Jody Hall was arrested by armed police while in the process of collecting a weapon supplied by Byrne. The arrest sent shockwaves through their operation. The risk of exposure was immense, but it was what came next that truly revealed the depths of Byrne's audacity and his dangerous sense of impunity. In a series of increasingly frantic EncroChat messages to his remaining contacts, Byrne began to formulate a detailed, alarmingly credible plan to spring Hall from a prison van while he was in transit. This wasn't idle fantasy. He discussed logistics with cold precision, claiming to have inside knowledge about the security detail, whether the guards would be in plain clothes or uniform. He chillingly boasted that he had contacts, people who had done it before, ready to execute the armed breakout. Ultimately, the rescue mission never progressed beyond the encrypted text, but it was a chilling insight into Byrne's psyche. While still juggling multi-ton cocaine shipments and laundering millions through Hatton Garden, he was actively planning a direct, violent assault on the state to protect his network. It exposed him as not just a sophisticated criminal businessman, but a man who was prepared to cross the line into open warfare if it meant protecting the machine he had so carefully built. The downfall of the Byrne and Devlin empire wasn't the result of a single informant's betrayal or a lucky customs seizure. It was triggered by a digital earthquake that rocked the European underworld to its core: Operation Venetic. This was the UK's operational response to the infiltration of the EncroChat platform by a joint team of French and Dutch law enforcement agencies. The network that thousands of high-level criminals had trusted with their lives, believing it to be impenetrable, had been cracked wide open. For investigators at the National Crime Agency, NCA, and the Metropolitan Police's Organized Crime Partnership, OCP, it was like being given the keys to the kingdom. Suddenly, the digital ghosts became flesh and blood targets. Years of unfiltered, boastful, and damningly specific conversations were laid bare. Every message was visible, every alias was being painstakingly connected to a real name, and every crime was being mapped out in astonishing detail. From that moment, the silent empire was no longer secure. Its days were numbered. The pillars of the network began to crumble with startling speed. First, Jody Hall, the firearms buyer. Then, the investigators moved on the financial heart of the operation. Chris O'Shea was arrested quietly at his home in New Eltham. As they raided his jewelry shop, the legitimate facade dissolved, revealing the laundering hub at the core of a £190 million conspiracy. The paper trail of gold and watches began to unravel everything. Finally, in a series of coordinated raids in October 2020, the OCP moved in on the architects themselves. They knew exactly where to go, who to target, and what they were looking for. They had read the script in Byrne's and Devlin's own words. Matthew Byrne was arrested at his suburban home in Sevenoaks. Inside, officers found 20,000 pounds in cash, stuffed in a drawer, banking slips showing huge deposits into hidden accounts, and the blinking EncroChat handset that held the digital DNA of his entire empire. A search of his girlfriend's address nearby was even more revealing. Officers had to use specialist equipment to break through a heavily reinforced security door, the kind rarely seen on a quiet residential street. It was a physical manifestation of the paranoia that lurked beneath Byrne's calm exterior. At Beau Devlin's flat, the story was told through his possessions. Officers found thousands in cash, a professional surveillance bug detector tool for a man constantly worried someone was listening, and a canister of illegal CS spray. His wardrobe was a shrine to his success, filled with rows of designer trainers and luxury watches. The illusion of invisibility had been violently shattered. The doors had been kicked off their hinges, and everything, the gold, the guns, the ghost companies, was now evidence. By early 2025, the case against Matthew Byrne and Beau Devlin was an ironclad fortress of evidence. Years of meticulous surveillance, thousands of decoded messages, damning photographs, a labyrinthine financial trail, and seizures of cash, drugs, and assets all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Their trial at Maidstone Crown Court was less a legal battle than a formal surrender. Faced with the overwhelming digital paper trail they themselves had created, neither man attempted to contest the core charges. Byrne, now 44, his calm exterior finally cracking under the weight of his crimes, pleaded guilty to the importation of cocaine and money laundering. Beau Devlin, 33, his street-smart bravado gone, followed suit, pleading guilty to drug trafficking and money laundering offenses. Their aliases, Slick Valley and Scalp Cleaner, were stripped away, leaving only two men in a dock facing the consequences of their choices. The prosecution, led by the Organized Crime Partnership, presented the court with the vast, staggering scale of their operation. They recounted the chillingly casual discussions of 5-ton loads of cocaine, the audacious 300,000 pounds dummy runs of bananas, and the seamless conversion of millions in illicit cash into a king's ransom in gold and watches. On the 7th of March 2025, the final reckoning was delivered. Matthew Byrne, the quiet architect of the enterprise, was sentenced to 21 years and 6 months in prison. Beau Devlin, his loyal and effective right-hand man, received a sentence of 17 years. In total, the two men who had hidden behind encrypted screens and false company fronts were jailed for a combined 38.5 years. Their key associates were already serving their own sentences. Chris O'Shea, the Hatton Garden jeweler who provided the financial lifeline, was jailed for 11 years. Jody Hall, the firearms buyer, was serving a 12-year sentence. The silent, sophisticated machine they had painstakingly built and run for nearly a decade had been systematically dismantled. Its architects, once masters of a digital underworld, were now just inmates, facing long years behind very real bars.